Let's just get into it, eh? Welcome to my guide on monitoring your investment portfolios and your watch lists with Google Sheets. So if you're an amateur investor like me and you would describe yourself as somewhere in between, I don't know, Wall Street bets, YOLOing Tesla to the moon, and Warren Buffett, you would probably have a portfolio that kind of matters to you. And you want to do some research and generally have an idea of what's happening with it and be on top of it. But if you're anything like me, then you tend to be a little bit disorganized. Your brokerage's research tools are cumbersome and borderline useless, and you tend to get your information from multiple sources, and it's all a bit nebulous on how you go upon doing this. Now, with the power of web APIs and good old-fashioned data scraping, you can actually track the performance of your portfolio as well as download any data that you might need to make future investment decisions all within Google Sheets. Now, to demonstrate this, I've built a tool or template that allows you to do all of this without any prior knowledge of Excel or programming whatsoever. Although I do recommend you learn these skills, they are really quite useful. So this spreadsheet template has several components to it, and they're all nicely organized into these little tabs. The first tab that we're going to talk about is pretty aptly named. It's the Portfolio tab. So the purpose of the Portfolio tab is rather straightforward. It just tracks the price performance of your holdings, whether those are stocks or ETFs, and also keeps track of dividends that you may have received to give you your total returns and roughly how your portfolio is allocated across different investments. Now, here I have 4 stocks in my portfolio. 2 of these are Canadian and 2 of these are American. Let's say I bought more shares of, let's say I bought AMD. We can go here, insert a new row. I'm just going to insert it above Amazon, but you can put it anywhere. The order doesn't matter. Go to one of the existing rows, do Control C to copy, go back to my new empty row, and Control V, or Command V, I guess if you're on a Mac, to paste. And immediately it's going to think that I've bought a bunch of Amazon again. So I have to change this to AMD, and then I have to open up these hidden columns to change the quantity and cost of how much I've purchased. So let's just say, for the sake of this example, I bought 1,000 shares of AMD and I paid $91. The current market price CMT of AMD is $92. Let's say I paid $91. And immediately you will see that our portfolio is adjusted. All of these are automatically populated except for earnings dates and days until earnings. The rest of the data is automatically populated. This sheet in particular relies heavily on Google Finance, the Google Finance formulas here. Basically, Google Finance will give you the average or the current market price of a stock, the closing price of a stock yesterday, 52-week high, 52-week low, and some other things. But here, all of these are calculated with Google Finance, and all the returns and profit losses are simply basic arithmetic. So that's all you need to do to add a new stock. We will deal with these later. These are actually, the earnings date is not something that's supplied by Google Finance. It's something that we'd have to pull from an external data source, which we will do once we talk about the Equities Data tab. Here, let's say I bought AMD, but I also bought Royal Bank, which is a Canadian stock. I can go here, or anywhere really, and do the same process of copying and pasting the formulas. But you'll notice that all the Canadian stocks, first of all, they're in Canadian dollars, so the currency column has to be in Canadian dollars, but they also have .to at the end of their tickers. So if I want to do Royal Bank, I would have to do royalbank.to, and Google Sheets is going to think this is a URL, so let's just get rid of that. And yeah, immediately you'll see that this populates quite nicely. The buy quantity and average cost. The average cost is always going to be in the base currency, so whatever currency the stock is trading in this case it's going to be in Canadian dollars. So let's say I bought Royal Bank at 105 Canadian dollars and I bought 10 shares, which actually is not a lot. So let's say I bought 100 shares. There we go. Now, a quick thing that I should probably have mentioned is these prices, current market price, yesterday close, and the 52-week high and 52-week lows, as well as the values that are calculated with them, are calculated based on either your home currency or the foreign currency. For the sake of maintaining comparability, to make sure everything's comparable, I keep everything in the home currency, and my home currency here is set to US dollars. If I don't want to convert all of these to the home currency, let's say I want the current price of Royal Bank and the current price of Aritzia in Canadian dollars, as well as TD Bank, I just toggle this to no. But upon doing that, the current value as well as all your profits and losses are in the last row are meaningless because it's trying to mix currencies, and that just doesn't make any sense. So that's why it's generally a good idea to keep everything in your home currency. And if you really need to check the price of something, you can turn the conversion off. Now, let's say we have an investment that's neither American nor Canadian. Let's say we have shares of Tencent, which are listed on the Hong Kong exchange. Officially, my spreadsheet here only supports American and Canadian stocks, but you can easily add shares from other exchanges by pretty much doing the same thing. So what you would do is, again, insert a new row, copy the formulas from a previous row and paste them over. So now you'll notice that the Canadian tickers all have .to at the end. This is the exchange code, and in fact, this is the Yahoo Finance exchange code. So all the tickers that you input into this entire spreadsheet, essentially, will be in Yahoo Finance notation. And if we look up Yahoo Finance exchange and data providers, you will go to Canada, and you'll see that TSX, Toronto Stock Exchange, is .to. Now, if I want to buy, for example, Tencent, which is listed in Hong Kong, the exchange code for that is hongkong.hk. And the ticker for Tencent is actually 0700. So I would do 0700.hk. However, this will not work for any of this. As you can see, it's all not available. And the reason for this is actually the Yahoo tickers here, and I need to get rid of this. The Yahoo tickers here are not used in any of these formulas. These are Google Finance formulas, and rather annoyingly, Google Finance has their own ticker notation. So what you have to do is you go select these two columns and do unhide. You'll see a column here for Google tickers. Now for the American stocks, this column doesn't do anything. It just takes the same ticker and copies it over. For Canadian stocks, it's going to do a little bit of a conversion. So Google's ticker notation, rather than appending .to, it prepends the exchange code and a colon. And the exchange codes aren't even the same either. As you can see, Google Finance uses TSE, Yahoo Finance uses TO. So my little formula here does a conversion if it ends in .to, but it does nothing if it's in Hong Kong or any other market. So we have to enter in the Hong Kong one manually, and the Hong Kong one for Google Finance just happens to be HKG. So HKG colon 0700. And if we do this, the rest of this gets populated. Another thing that you have to watch out for is currency. Since these are listed in Hong Kong dollars, we have to put Hong Kong dollars as the currency. So the most recent price for Tencent was $439. So let's say we bought 439 Hong Kong dollars, and we bought, sure, why not, 1,000 of them. This is in Hong Kong dollars. These are all in US dollar, or everything here is in US dollars because we're doing the conversion, but this is in Hong Kong dollars, right? This price is in Hong Kong dollars. Everything here is in US dollars. So we have to add Hong Kong dollars to our conversion table. So we put HKD here, which matches the currency here, and we can actually just copy these two formulas, these two cells. So this will automatically take the Hong Kong dollar, US dollar conversion rate, and we're going to say yes, we want to do a conversion, and now you'll see that the 10-cent ticker is in US dollars, as with the rest of them, and all of these are now comparable, and everything is as it should be. And we can hide this column again. We don't need this column anymore. And that's the portfolio page. Moving on. Next, we have our equities data page. This is essentially the bread and butter of this entire project. What this allows you to do is pull all sorts of fundamental information from their financial statements, as well as estimates. So Wall Street analyst estimates of growth, price ratios, and two moving averages. So this is the 50-day simple moving average and the 200-day moving average of the stock price. This is for people that want to do trend analysis. Also, you can keep notes at the end. So how this entire sheet works is if you want to add a ticker, say I just bought AMD, I can put this here. I'm just going to make a new row for AMD, and I can make it anywhere, but I'm just going to put it here. AMD. I'm going to actually copy this entire row of formulas, so I'm going to have to type the ticker again. And you'll see that automatically there is the name that gets populated and the current market price. These two work off of Google Finance. The rest of this information, next earnings date, latest quarter, most of the financial information, except for, I believe, the price earnings ratio, all of this information is taken from Yahoo Finance. Let's just add some more tickers. I added AMD. What else did I buy? I bought Royal Bank, so I'm going to add ry.to. Bought Royal Bank, and I bought 10 cents. So we're going to add another one for 10 cents. Let's copy this first, and let's do 0700.hk. And as you can see again, the name and the price for 10 cent don't populate because Google Finance doesn't know what it's looking for. So we have to unhide this column and put the Google Finance ticker in here as well. And that would be HKG 0700. There we go. And now that we're done that, let's say that I want to add some things to my watch list. So let's say I have, I don't know, I want to look at Visa. And you can see all of these headers and titles have number signs in front of them. Basically anything that's not a ticker, say you want to make a title or you want to put notes or something like that, you would have to put number signs in front of them. Now, once you have all of these tickers in, you'll see that the name and the market price is populated, as well as, I think, price earnings ratio. So these are off Google Finance, but nothing else here works off of Google Finance. All the other information is collected off Yahoo Finance, and the data hasn't been pulled yet. So we have to go to Retrieve Data, press this button here. What this script does is it will take between 0 to 6 minutes. The first time you run it, you have to give it permission to run, and then you have to run it again after you've given it permission. But when it's done, you should be able to see that all of this information will be populated. And yeah, there we go. AMD doesn't pay a dividend, so this is all NA. 10 cent apparently does. And all the other information is as it should be. It appears correct. And you'll see here that the last retrieve date, or the last retrieve time, I guess, is now today's time. So it is currently 8:44 p.m. in New York. That's updated as well. What this script does, what this button does, is essentially it reads the tickers from the first column of this sheet. It ignores symbol, of course, and ignores everything with a number sign, and it ignores all the blank rows. Now it takes all those tickers and puts them into a list. And what it does for that list is firstly, it goes into the sheet called stock data raw, which is hidden by default. So you have to go to view hidden sheets to see it. It deposits that list here. As well, for each ticker, it will go to Yahoo Finance and retrieve this information. So there's a lot of data points that it tends to retrieve. For each of those data points, it retrieves it and it deposits into this sheet. And what this sheet does, as you can see, these are all index match formulas, is there's a hidden row above here as well. So there's the sheets full of hidden rows and hidden columns. There's a hidden row above here. It matches the code here with the code in here so that it knows which data value to pull, basically. It pulls the data point that is labeled MRQ in terms of columns and AAPL in terms of rows, which is September 25th, 2020. And you can see that the earnings date also gets pulled as well. So the earnings dates here are now populated. Remember before they were all NA or not available. So that is essentially how this script works. Now, we ran it by pressing a button. Alternatively, you can have it run automatically every couple of hours or at a scheduled time per day. How you would do this is you would set one of these times. Let's say I want the equities data every 6 hours, and let's do macroeconomic data at the same time. We'll set this toggle to on, and I would press the set button and it will run a script and it will set those toggles. Now moving on again to our macroeconomic data sheet. This sheet essentially charts macroeconomic data. And you get a list of these variables which you can plot. And if you press 1, the plot will change automatically and the numbers here will change automatically. This is the 2-year Treasury bond and we want the past 5 years. So from 2015 December to today. This is pretty self-explanatory to use. Again, this data does not get collected in real time. It does not refresh in real time. You would have to refresh the macroeconomic data in much the same way that we did with the equities data by pressing a button or by setting it on a trigger. And much like equities data, when you run that trigger, it actually stores the information in another hidden sheet called Fred Data Raw. So there are some instructions here on how this works and how you can add new data points. And as you can see, the script is finished running. All our information should be updated to today. Most of the information here, such as bond yields, really only need to be updated once daily. There's really no point in getting CPI every couple minutes when it only gets reported by the government once every quarter or once every month. I'm not really sure. I would put macroeconomic data on a longer trigger, maybe 12 hours or once per day. Now, how does this sheet work? Well, what the script does is essentially it reads the codes here and ignores everything that starts with date. It ignores date, basically. And for each code, it makes an API call to the St. Louis Federal Reserve Economic Research Database. And here we have the data for 10-year Treasury rates. Let's say we wanted something else. Let's say we wanted commercial paper. And let's say we wanted the 3-month commercial paper rate, which is this mess, apparently. This data has a code, and you can view the code in the URL. It is DCPF3M. Now, if I wanted to add a new data series, say I wanted to add our commercial paper data series, all I would have to do is go here, insert new columns, and it doesn't matter where you insert it, but you have to insert 2 new columns, one for the dates, date, and DCPF3M, I believe, was the code that we were looking for. DCPF3M, yes. As you can see, obviously, there's nothing here yet. We go to Retrieve Data, click Macroeconomic Data. It will run the script and populate this data, and it will do so for each of these. However, this data, it exists here, and we can use it here however we like. It's not going to exist in here yet. So what we have to do is, first, we have to add this to our dictionary. And you want to insert a new row above the last row. And we're going to call this commercial paper. Paper 3 months. DCPF3M. So here I just put a random name and the code that corresponds with the column in here, which is DCPF3M. I right-click this cell, go to Data Validation, and I put the name that I just entered, which was commercial paper 3M, separated by commas. And it should be the case that I can now go here, click the commercial paper 3M button, 3-month commercial paper button, and the data will populate here. And I can do this for all different times. Cool, eh? The next sheet we have is the company snapshot. Now this is very easy to use. This is basically you put a ticker here, for example, Amazon, and immediately we get all of this information in pretty decent detail. We get price ratios, revenue estimates, EPS estimates, revisions on whether analysts are changing their estimates, which will reflect how bullish or bearish the street is on a particular name. And we get the financial statements as well. And here we can actually change the periodicity of the financial statements, except for cash flows. We can change the balance sheet and income statements from quarterly or an annual basis. Pretty useful if you're just heard of a stock and you want to take a look briefly on what it's about. Tend to use the company snapshot for those sorts of things. Lastly, we have our alerts page. This is essentially if you want to receive an alert if a stock goes above or below a certain price, or whether a price ratio goes above or below a certain value. Right now I have price alerts set to, as you can see, yesterday's price times 0.85, which basically says if the stock price today falls 15%, it's going to send an alert. And if the stock price today goes above 15% from yesterday, it's going to send an alert. Let's test these alerts out. So let's say I want to alert if the price of Apple falls above 125. That's my selling point. I'm going to sell Apple if it goes above 125. And you'll see I will suddenly get a sell alert. All the formulas here are essentially just if functions, if statements that compare values in the blue columns with values in the gray columns. And they will tell you either to buy or sell. You can change what it says. You can do whatever you want with it just by changing these if statements. Additionally, there is also an email alert. For example, every day at a certain time, it will check here. And if anything says sell or anything says buy, it will send you an alert that describes Apple triggered a sell alert at price X or something of that sort. Or Amazon triggered a PE alert at PE ratio of so on and so forth. The functionality is currently disabled because it requires additional permissions, and people seem to be really averse to giving my programs the permission to send emails with their email accounts. But that is something that if you contact me, I can help you implement very quickly and very easily. That's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Maybe you learned something. I highly recommend you take a look at some of these formulas and try to understand what it's doing. Try to develop some spreadsheet skills. Hopefully you'll learn something. There's quite a lot that you can do with Google's platform, so if you want to request additional features or have any feedback, I'm more than happy to take your comments. I actually have other sheets or other projects. For example, I have code that pulls dividend history, code that analyzes the dividend history, so it tells you how volatile dividends are for certain companies, stuff like this. There's a lot that you can do, and there's a lot of quality of life improvements that you can make with this as well. For example, you can have a web form to enter your trades in rather than having to enter them in by making a new row, adding the ticker, trying to calculate your average costs, and entering the quantity, and every time you sell, trying to calculate your new average costs and entering the quantity. There's a lot of quality of life improvements that definitely be made as well. I suggest you play around with it. I'm gonna make a few changes based on user suggestions as well. I try to keep an update log on the documentations page here. I also have a few other projects in the pipeline, more based on Excel or on web applications and mobile applications rather than Google Sheets. You can subscribe or follow me if you think those might be interesting. And maybe I'll do a series on like scripting as well, or writing code for this particular purpose, if that may be of interest as well. Anyway, take care. That's it. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.